Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Product in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on some of the exceptional technology leaders we have as the LA community. With us today is Josh Grayson. Excited to have you here, Josh.
Thanks for having me, Ethan. Really happy to do this.
Oh, man, all the people here, I know you got a voice for the radio. I've been excited to have you on this show since you accepted the invite.
I'm flattered.
Well, more from Josh in a moment. First, we'll have to speak about our sponsors. Product in LA is brought to you by Uruit. They're a digital product development agency with over 15 years of experience helping US-based companies build web and mobile apps by scaling their teams with highly skilled professionals from Latin America. With expert full-stack software developers, UX and UI designers, product managers, strategists, DevOps engineers, architects, machine learning experts, and more. When you work with Uruit, you're getting the collective knowledge of 150 plus technology enthusiasts that are part of the Uruit team. To learn more, go to uruit.com. That's URUIT.com. We are also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. Available at pma.la, they are the largest professional organization for product and designers in Los Angeles. With more than 3,000 members from over 500 companies, they host monthly meetups, organize the Product Leader Council, where CPOs and heads of product connect in small 6 to 8 member pods, and have a mentorship program where they connect working product managers with students from underrepresented groups to help build a better and more diverse next generation of product people. To learn more about PMA, go to pma.la. To learn more about the mentorship program, go to pma.la/mentorship. Our guest today is Josh Grayson. He is a senior product manager for kids and family at Wondery, an Amazon company. His past roles have included head of product at Way Better, and he's held product roles at Zwift, Fender, and NBC. And one interesting fact you might not know about Josh, based on his LinkedIn profile, is he is a diehard Eagles fan. And just a note to our listeners, we are recording this the day after the Super Bowl. Sorry about the timing, Josh. That was a rough one.
Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to blame the refs, but I'm gonna blame the refs on that one. That was a bad call when we didn't need it.
Oh yeah, and, full disclosure, I'm also a pretty diehard Eagles fan. I like to say that was a great 3 quarters of football, and then Patrick Mahomes is a generational quarterback. He's very solid, but the way that last few minutes was called, you'd never have a football play again if they called that type of contact for every play.
Do you think they have retros and they'll cover like what to keep doing, what to stop? They must have something like that.
If they don't
kind of
before,
like the sprint,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if they didn't before, they better have some sort of retro. And if they need some feedback, maybe we got some people who can help provide that for them.
Yeah, and the refs.
Josh, really excited to have you here, and you are from Philly, and just excited to learn more about your journey into technology. How did you get to be the senior product manager that you are today?
Yeah, so it's a long story, and one thing I love about product management is that people come from all different backgrounds, and they usually have kind of a winding path into the field. But mine's like extra winding, or at least I think so. So I'll kind of start from the start. I went to Emerson College, which is mostly known as a film school. It's in Boston, but I didn't study film. I studied new media, which at the time was kind of the intersection of art and technology. Building websites and I was really into Flash back then and 3D modeling and things like that.
Nice.
And coming out of college, I was a freelancer, and I was way too young and inexperienced to freelance because I really had no real experience. But I pulled it off, and I was really scrappy, and I got my work from everywhere, from agencies to friends to Craigslist and things like that. And one day I came across a job post to teach that sort of thing at a summer camp organization. It was like a computer camp called ID Tech Camps. They teach kids 7 to 17, all kinds of things, like the kind of stuff that I studied.
That's great.
And I knew the tech pretty well, but I wasn't sure how I would do working with kids. And like singing camp songs and things like that. But I went for it one summer. I worked at their Princeton University location I had a great time. I taught the kids a lot of stuff, and it was really cool. And it turned out I was great working with kids. And I got more and more involved in that company, from being a camp instructor to eventually writing curriculum for them, and really wearing a lot of hats for that company because they were a startup. And I eventually became a full-time employee, a regional manager for them, overseeing several of their locations.
Wow.
And
So that started from, just not to jump in, but just that started from, a summer job essentially of, can I teach these kids these skills that I know? And it budded into, sounds like a more robust role.
Yeah, it was really a first career that I had. I worked there for almost 10 years on the operations side of things, running these kind of summer camps, and also kind of helping to grow the startup, doing boots on the ground marketing and all sorts of different. Everybody there kind of wore a lot of hats. And one thing that was bubbling up in the company was the notion of having some kind of online product, because we had these year-round camps, but it was a really strong customer base, and they loved the organization and they wanted more year-round. And we also couldn't be everywhere. We were only at certain universities, which there's only so many that we could work at, even though I think they have about 50 across the country at the time. So there was already this idea of having like an online code school for kids. But what it was missing was somebody to kind of product manage that and kick it off. So I put my hat in the ring, and I kind of did an internal interview, and I didn't get the role. But then the guy who did get the role declined, and then I got the role. And remember, this was an education management company. They weren't used to building technical products. So my first job title was technical brand manager, and I had to look that up. And it turns out that like a technical brand manager is like the guy who makes sure that McDonald's ketchup in France tastes the same as McDonald's ketchup in New York. Like, it's kind of a different thing. So I realized I need a job title. And I also realized that whatever I'm doing is something that I really like, and it might be a career for me. So I better get this right. So I started researching what this kind of thing was called, because I was acting as kind of a product manager, general manager, just kind of pulling this whole program together and making sure we built the right thing. And I stumbled across the term product manager. It checked all the boxes for what I was doing, and even more so was something that I thought I could see a whole career out of. So I kind of made the case as to why that should be the accurate title, and we switched that to my job title. And then kind of the rest is history. And that product actually spun out into being its own kind of company within the company. I was an intrapreneur, if you've heard that term.
I haven't. That's great.
Yeah, so it's right. Intrapreneur is when you spin a company out of a kind of a bigger company from the inside out, as opposed to the typical pathway of kind of from the ground up. But at a certain point, I realized that if this is going to be my career, I need to start working at tech companies, and I need much more experience than what I taught myself, because I didn't come through a typical kind of tech company story.
And how old were you at this point?
Oh wow! I had just had my first kid, so that was about 8 years ago. So I was in my early 30s.
But how long have you been at that company at that point?
I'd been there almost about 10 years. I did about 5 years doing operations management and kind of running the programs. My region was the East Coast, kind of a big bubble around Philly, New York, and that sort of thing. But then I did about 5 years as a kind of product manager, general manager for this kind of learn to code startup for kids.
And so it started as a just like in-person summer camp, and then built around it this kind of digital wing, and that's what you were able to help bring into fruition.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of exactly what it was. So we the camp had been running for about 10 years at that point. They had about 50 locations. I think about at that point 30,000 students every summer. By this time, probably about 60,000. They're still around. They're great Edutech camps. And they I think whatever year that was of the company, maybe it was like year 15 for them. They had just gotten their first round of funding, and their investors were very interested in diversifying into a product like that. It's kind of what prompted that kind of energy. So yeah, it was a website. It probably would have been like an app if we built it today, but it was a website where we had tutorials to learn game design, to learn to code, Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, and a lot of other kind of fun game features and contests and stuff that we would do. I had a small staff of about 5 people at a little studio in Burbank. We built little recording booths. We did it all ourselves. It was a very scrappy little startup.
That's fantastic. So, kind of recapping your story here, it sounds like it was really a career birthed out of passion. You started getting interested in, building these websites, getting interested in design, worked as a kind of a summer gig essentially for a summer camp, and learned that you really did enjoy it and loved it. And you turned that into what turned out to be, the mystery at the end of the novel was that you were a product manager all along. Turned into a product career. That's fantastic. And then where did you go next? Where was the next stop on the tour?
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to be a product manager, but I was very I think the term is like imposter syndrome, right? Because it was only my first job. I wasn't in these big tech companies or coming through a computer science background like a lot of folks. So I had to figure out my next move. And what I did have was a lot of experience in the education industry through these kind of summer camps, and because we partner with schools and we did a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, in 10 years, it's solid. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a company in Culver City called Edlio, and they are kind of like a Wix or a Squarespace, but for schools specifically. Okay. It's websites for schools and also some other kind of administrative tools for schools. So I stuck with the education industry, but I switched from B2C to B2B, basically selling. The schools were then our customers, and the product was this big content management system platform that was bespoke for the needs of a school, and even included a number of school and admin tools that are beyond just like a front end website. And I had a great time doing that. And at one point, I got a call from a company that said, "Hey, do you want to come be a contractor at NBC, where we work together?" And I said, "Are you sure you have the right guy? Because I've only worked at these like really scrappy tech ed startups, and this is a huge media and entertainment company that's like huge, and I've never worked at one."
Like video streaming coming from the educational space. Was there a crossover? Were you doing videos in the educational space, and that was kind of the bridge for you to move over to an NBC?
Yeah, that I had on my side is because it was a video system. I also freelanced. I was still freelancing, building websites, so I was really good with content management systems, which as you know, that was a big part of what we were doing at NBC.
Yes.
So they were again crazy enough to take a chance on me, and I landed. And I remember my first-ish day on the job, sitting in like a big boardroom, and I was like really intimidated because I was in these like little scrappy startups, tech ed industry, which is a small corner of tech, all in, and kind of introduced myself to everybody. And I said my name was Josh, and the SVP said, we already got a lot of Joshes, so what's your nickname? And I like kind of blanked, and I just thought back to a nickname from college, and I said Grizzle. And then that was my nickname for the rest of my time there, but it worked out for me pretty well.
And that nickname did stick, and it comes with the voice too. You have the grizzly guy with the grizzly voice.
Yeah,
that makes it easy. And then these days, you find yourself working in the podcast world at Amazon. Where did that come from? I guess there was some stops at Fender along the way as well, and Zwift. Is this kind of media still interesting to you? Is it especially podcast? I mean, I feel like it's a natural progression from video to audio. How does that fit into where your passions lie?
Yeah, the role I'm at now, I think, complements my passions and my background really well, because I would say the one common thread of most of the places that I worked at, it was content, but most of it was related to kind of education or self-improvement. At Fender, I worked on an app where people were learning to play guitar. And then I had a stint at like 3 different fitness tech companies, again on this, and most of them were kind of content driven in one way or another. So I have a lot of experience with kind of educational stuff, and what the Wondery is investing in and trying to expand to is this kind of kids and family content. And that's the piece that I was happy to return to, because I really do have a passion for making education and that kind of stuff fun for kids. And Wondery has an ever-growing catalog of really awesome content for kids. It's what I like to call edutainment. They have shows like one of my favorite ones is Wow in the World, where you can learn about science or the human body or space, or history and things like that. And I think it's a really great cross section of fun and entertainment. And I like kind of products for kids. So I was able to kind of pull all those things together. I'd had my own Wondery for a while. It seemed like a cool company. I like the model of a kind of small startup in this much bigger organization that is Amazon, because I have experience being the smaller company as part of the bigger org at a few different places I've worked at. So it checked a lot of boxes, and it's a great place to be.
That's funny, because it sounds like it goes back to that first summer job where you were wondering how would you be interacting with kids, and it seems like you found a great place to be. It's not, you turned out you really did like working with kids, and then you found a way to get back to it in your current role.
Yeah, I remember at the training for that first job, I thought it was gonna be like a technical training. So I showed up and they started teaching us like camp songs. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm a professional like this. But then when I actually got there with the kids, I was like totally the guy singing the songs and like playing the games, and I loved it. And I learned that about myself. It's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. And this concept of, the kids podcast is really interesting in a day and age when video is so prevalent so early in lives. I have a 3-year-old now. I remember when he was, I think I want to say like 1 or 2, like he started taking an interest in our phones. I guess my 9-month-old was super interested in our phones. We don't let her use it, but they have this visual video, as part of their lives. And maybe what's something that's been lost for a while and maybe coming back is this idea of, the audio education, right? So car rides where there aren't the screens in front of them in their iPads, but it's, maybe a podcast that's being played over the radio. So they're using their imaginations for what the words are going to, how to visualize those words and the information that's being processed, rather than the screen, which, really just kind of puts it right in front of them.
Yeah. And that's what we hear from our customers. One of the things they really look to for podcasts is that kind of no screen experience, where kids can kind of fill in with their own imaginations and be a little more proactive in that experience than just kind of receiving everything from a screen. That's
awesome. And, I know you can't go too deeply into, what's happening over at Wondery, but in general, in terms of, trends you see in the future for, I guess, edutainment, I love that, and specifically aimed at children, what trends are you following? Where do you see it going? What do you like that's out there right now?
Well, I'll touch on something that you alluded to just previously, which is kind of a funny paradox with what I just said, which is in the podcast industry in general, there's this shift of mindset from podcast being an audio only experience to being an audio first experience.
That's right.
And what I mean by that is a vast amount of people listen to their podcasts on YouTube, right? Which is a video platform. So as the podcast industry, right, a podcast will always be audio first, but there's becoming this expectation for a secondary video or otherwise screened experience. So we're certainly analyzing what is that like for kids, and if podcasts are sought for kids to be a place where you get away from the screen, what's kind of an elegant way of merging those two concepts. So that's something that we're batting around a lot. Outside of that, I can just say there's a lot of cool content and some cool intellectual property Wondery's gonna have in the years to come. So
that's awesome.
Keep a close eye.
And then outside of Wondery, is there anything else that you're paying attention to in that world, or maybe the podcast world in general?
In podcast world in general, let me see.
What should I be paying attention to, Josh? I guess
I'll pitch. So one kind of, I mean, one of the other things I do at Wondery is, Wondery's main stuff is true crime. That's kind of their breadwinner. So I'm also building like the parental controls to make sure that you can have a kid's view where kids see what they're supposed to see and that sort of thing. But that segues to say there's a podcast I'm listening to. It's a Wondery podcast called Frozen Head, which is about cryogenics.
Okay.
Specifically a facility in New Mexico. And it's pretty wild stuff. It's much more wild than I ever would have thought. So that's an interesting one if you're into the kind of morbid stuff that Wondery also contains.
Do they have like Ted Williams in that facility? Did that come up?
It's the big one. So I don't know for sure, but I would say high chance. It's Alcor is like the main one in New Mexico, and they freeze their heads. But I'll save it for the podcast. That's not my
great.
story to tell.
Oh man, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you here, Josh. And I guess the last question we always ask on the show here is, what's the most LA thing that's happened to you? And this could be tech related or not.
Yeah. So have you heard of the SoCal Challenge?
Okay. Maybe, but yeah, I think I have a sense of where you're going for, but yeah.
So the SoCal Challenge is in the early morning, you go surfing, and then you go up to the mountains and you go snowboarding like in the afternoon. And then by, the evening, you're in the desert to have a dinner with a glass of wine. Cause that's something you can only do in SoCal. I've never done that. I've never done any of those things because I don't surf, I don't ski, but I came close. So when I proposed to my wife, I had booked like a nice little cabin in Big Bear.
Okay.
And we were going up there and we were kind of going up the mountain and they were turning cars away without chains. And I had like, this is when I was going to propose to my wife. So I had like the house all done up with roses. Like we did a whole thing. But they're turning people away. We were too scared to drive with chains. So as a last minute audible, we booked a hotel in the desert. So in like 2 hours, I went from like epic snow, like, absolute mayhem snow to, super hot desert weather. And then on the way to the desert is, if you ever seen Pee-wee's Great Adventure, do you know that scene where Pee-wee kind of has a love story moment in the mouth of a big kind of roadside attraction, Dinosaur?
Yes.
It's a famous scene. Yeah.
Yes.
So as we were driving there, I see that on the side of the road and I pull over and we go up in the Dinosaur in the T-Rex mouth. And that's where I proposed to my wife. So that feels amazing. Like very SoCal LA on a few fronts. We have like the iconic movie scene recreation and like the SoCal Challenge from snow to desert. So that's my thing.
That is one of the most LA things I've ever heard, Josh. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Recreating a movie scene at the site of the movie in the middle in the middle of the move from the snow-soaked mountains to the desert. That's terrific, man. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, Josh, and thank you for sharing your journey. It's an amazing story, and love that you found your passion and you continued with it, and it took you to an amazing place. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Cool, and thanks for having me on. I really, really enjoyed sharing everything.
Me too, man. I'd also like to thank our sponsors again. That's PMALA at pma.la and Uruit at uruit.com. I want to thank you all for joining us once again, and we'll see you next time on Product in LA.